Well, hello friends. Today I'd like to talk to the audience about conceal carry. And before we get started, make sure if you are going to carry concealed that you've covered any particular state or local legislation around carrying concealed. Make sure you have the appropriate permitting, etc. But I've been carrying concealed for quite a few years, and I just wanted to share some of the insights and some of the things that I've learned about carrying concealed over the years. I would say that for 9 months of the year, most of the time I'm carrying strong side. And I like carrying typically right at about a 3 o'clock position, right, cutting my pocket almost right in my trousers right in half. And that to me is the most comfortable. I don't have the most flexibility in my shoulder, and that's where I feel the most comfortable in terms of drawing from concealment. Typically, I wear garments. This is some examples of what I might wear in the fall or winter or even the early spring. But here's a polar fleece vest. Here's one as well from Patagonia. But all of these are the types of vests that I might wear for many of the months during the year. And I like to carry, when I'm carrying for those months, I typically carry outside the waistband. I know I can carry inside the waistband, but I prefer, it's more comfortable for me to carry outside the waistband. And I find that these type of garments cover anything that I would want to. I'm very concealed in that way. And it's something that I really enjoy wearing vests. It's a way for me also to regulate, the best way I can regulate temperature in those months. And when it gets into the deep winter, obviously I'm going to have a big winter coat on, so these are not as nearly as important. Now, types of holsters that I like for carrying strong side. This is an example of one. This is a Kydex holster from We the People. I got this recently and I've tried it out. I really like it. To be honest, I'm a big fan of Kydex. I've used it for years in competition. But this particular one is a paddle design that makes it easy to put into my trousers over my belt, and it's easy to deploy into my pants and get it going. So this is something that I really like, and this is made for a Commander length 1911, which is what I carry primarily for almost all the year. The other one I like is this leather holster from Bulldog, and the reason I like this, a very inexpensive holster. This doesn't cost less than $20, I think. But what I really like about it, it has an 1.5-inch belt loop, so that if I have a larger carry belt that's stronger, it won't have a problem accommodating an 1.5-inch belt width. And it also carries for a 3-inch 1911, a Commander length, a government, even with a rail, as well as a whole host of other semi-auto pistols. So there's a lot of flexibility in this simple little piece of kit, and I really like this. And this has kind of been my go-to when I'm struggling to what I'm going to wear in terms of a holster. This is one that I go to quite often. So those are two thoughts around what you might want to consider in terms of a strong side holster. Now, for those other months when we're in the summertime, and in the summertime, this is the way I would typically be dressed. I would go to, whether it's ice cream store or walking around the lake with my wife, but this would be a traditional way that I would be dressed. Today, there's nothing that's with me. I've checked and double checked that everything's unloaded, but here's an example of an empty magazine. And typically I like to keep my magazines front facing like I would in a mag pouch, but I put them in my pocket. And I find that I can access them quite easily. I don't need a mag pouch potentially printing. So for me, having it in my pocket is very easy to deploy. I know where it's at. I can make a mag change quite easily. The other thing is I carry for the summertime in an appendix position. So typically, and I'm going to bring the pistol out and just show you what that looks like. But again, empty magazine, and the gun is completely clear. And just so everybody knows that the gun there's nothing in the magazine itself. So one of the things to consider when carrying in a appendix carry, and that is taking extra time, and it's a tip that I got from Mike Pannone years ago about reholstering. And his thought at the defensive pistol class that I took with him was, bring your pistol out very efficiently. You want to bring your pistol out and bring it to bear when you need to. You want to do that in an efficient manner because time matters. But when you're trying to bring your pistol back into your holster, take all the time you need. And so in that example, I just want to go through what I do to reholster from an appendix carry. So again, I've talked before, when the gun is in a safe condition, I have my thumb safety up, and I always put my trigger in the ejection port, and that was a tip I got from Ken Hackenthorne years ago. What I like to do is tie up my garment so it's way out of the way of what we're going to be dealing with. And what I like to do is keep my barrel oriented out, and I kind of push my hips forward. And I keep it out, I keep it out, I keep it out until the very last minute, and I walk it right in and watch it go into the holster. And that way I know that I'm safely back in the holster. I don't have to worry that something would get caught in it, that my trigger would my hand would somehow, or my trigger finger would somehow get in the trigger housing. None of that exists. So that's a very safe way to put the gun back into an appendix condition. But again, like I said, this is a pretty typical way I would look and operate. And obviously there's no print on the gun, and so I'm very happy with the way that goes. Now, how do we deploy? How do we bring it to bring it out when we're going to use it? What I like to do is, like all draws, I like to move both hands at the same time. So what I do is when I go to this garment, and I like to grab almost on my right thigh, I bring it up high. I got my other hand deploying down on the gun in a really good purchase on the gun. I bring it out. I bring it to about here's when I deploy the thumb safety, as I'm already acquired the target, and I would drop the shot. And so that sequence is kind of what I think about when I'm drawing. And again, we'll tie up our garment, we keep it out, and drop it back in safely. So the other thing you can do in terms of practicing, I would encourage you to practice your draws from concealment. You can't spend enough time doing it. You want it to be absolute muscle memory built into this process of drawing from concealment. I can do it like we're doing down here in a dry fire environment, but I would encourage you to do a couple things. Get a shot timer. So, when you're practicing a draw from concealment, you can set up particular par times. You might start with 3 or more seconds. I'm gonna use 2.5 seconds today for this little exercise, but when you're drawing from concealment, maybe make sure you can do it in a smooth and efficient manner so that you can bring your gun out in a safe way. And I would also encourage you can do it in a dry fire, but you can also do it with live fire. So if you're going to carry concealed, you need to be competent and be able to handle your gun in a situation that you might need to bring it out in an efficient manner, and also be able to reholster your firearm in a safe manner. So with that, let's just do a dry fire exercise. So we're going to be basically just kind of casually thinking about, I'm going to hit the button and it'll deploy. And I was within the time frame. That was probably a 2 second or so. That's 2.5 second par time, and I was just under that window. Again, I'll orientate my hips out and keep my finger in a very safe position, and I drop it in at the last minute. We know that we have a safe reholstering in appendix carry. Again, we'll do it one more time for demonstration. And we were right about at the 2.5 second window, that one. I took my time on that trigger prep. Again, as we want to go back in, I push my hips out and right back into the holster. So those are some of the things to consider. The other thing is, when you're not standing up and walking around town, you're in your car, make sure that you have a holster, whether it's strong side, whether it's appendix, it's comfortable for you to. And I can drive with this, in an appendix carry all day long. It's not uncomfortable by any means. And I would also recommend a holster that is made for appendix carry. So this particular one, and this was a recommendation, I think it was from, I saw a video with Mike Seeclander, and it's by Precision Holster, and I love it. And it's made specifically for appendix carry. And that's important because it's very comfortable. It clearly doesn't print on me when I'm carrying in a concealed manner. But make sure you're comfortable in a car. Make sure that you have the proper clearance for a safety belt. So if you had to deploy your gun in a situation where you were in a seated position, you could do so. And also, further consideration on a strong side. Sometimes there'll be interference with the safety belt. Make sure you've worked through that routine so you understand how you're going to bring your gun out if you had to use it in a situation where you were in a car. So those are some of the things to consider. I know it's not a complete list. There's probably a million other things to consider, but those are some of the things that I consider and some of the things that I've learned over the last 20 plus years of carrying concealed. With that, as always, be safe, God bless you, and thanks for watching. Really appreciate it.